80% of this country owns less than a quarter acre of land. If you don't have much land, here are the 3 crops you really should grow. The first crop I think everybody should grow, especially if you don't have a whole lot of space, is corn. I got corn hanging up here. I got corn over here. Corn. Corn is an amazing feed crop. It's an amazing food crop. Corn is the most productive crop just about anybody can grow. It's the most productive grain crop, and it's some of the highest calories per square foot that you can grow in any situation, absolutely anywhere. You just really can't beat corn for any type of a grain production. Let me show you some of the corns that I've been growing here. Get my box of corn. So I've got this one hanging up here, right? This is called Early Pink. It's my absolute favorite feed corn for chicken feed. Early Pink popcorn. So it's got a smaller kernel size. It's great for chickens. It's a higher protein flint corn, and it's an early season corn, so it does pretty good up here in the north. I love that corn. I get about 4 to 6 ounces of grain per ear. I'll get 2 ears per stalk, and I get 1 stalk every 2 square feet of land. So if I've only got myself a little 10-foot square, 10 by 10, 100 square feet, I can grow 25, 45 pounds of corn in a 10-foot by 10-foot square. So what kind of a feed value or food value is in, let's say, 20 to 40 pounds of corn? Well, 1 pound of corn is about 1,600 calories. So you could figure that a pound, pound and a half of corn, that's about a whole day's worth of food right there. And this type of corn that I grow, these flint corns, like my Early Pink, I've got my Atomic Orange, I've got my Grizzly Red, and my Wade's Giant Indian. These are all high protein corns, so honestly, you could consider that more or less a meal in itself. I can get 20 plus full meals out of a 10-foot square of dirt planted with a nice high protein corn. Even some of the more moderate yielding stuff like my Early Pink. So yes, corn. Corn is something that nobody thinks about. A lot of people will grow a little sweet corn because it's tasty and all. Nobody considers growing a nice, I got all kinds of varieties here, a nice dry corn. It's incredible food value per square foot, and it's easy to grow. Better yet, it's the easiest thing that you can store. Dry shelled corn, I have some that's been in cans for a couple years. We just put it in glass jars with the lid on it. It's still been sitting there and it's still great. You don't have to can it, you don't have to seal it, you don't have to process it in any way. It just dries out naturally. You use your hand to pull it off the ear, throw it in a container, and it's storable for years. The next thing that I recommend people grow if you don't have a lot of space is beans. And I'm not talking green beans. I love green beans, but if you're really trying to maximize the food value of what you're doing, you're going to grow some shelled beans, which any green bean can be a shelled bean. Some are just more productive that way than others. I like a cranberry bean. There's many varieties of cranberry bean, but that's one of the ones that I've found grows best in my area for productivity. So a 10-foot by 10-foot square, I can get in one single 10-foot row of my beans, I can get 1 pound of shelled beans. So if I got, I don't know, 5 rows, I can get 5 pounds of shelled beans. If I'm planting double rows in there, I can functionally get 10 pounds of dry beans. What's 10 pounds of beans worth? How many days will it take your family to go through 10 pounds of dried beans? That's some serious food value, and beans are quite high in protein. They have a good fat content to them. They're very nutritious. So, beans. The third crop that you should probably grow if you don't have a whole lot of space is potatoes. I had just dug up another couple crates here yesterday. These ones, which ones are these? These ones are a mix of russets and Irish cobbler. I can get 4 pounds of potato easily from one plant. That's a pretty good amount. 4 pounds. That's a sack of potatoes at the grocery store. How many potatoes can I harvest out of a 10-foot square? Well, I can plant 10 down in one row, and I can do 5 rows. That means I can expect anywhere from 150 to 300 pounds of good spuds from a 10-foot square. Don't knock those down. And that's a conservative number too. So those are the 3 crops. Corn, beans, potato. Corn and beans and potatoes. Not a sweet corn. Some kind of a flint corn, a dent corn, or a flour corn. A corn that's made for having a nice full starchy grain that's easy to store. You can grind it. You can cook with it. Corn is productive, prolific. It's easy to grow. It's easy to store. Beans. Beans are fairly productive. Nowhere near what corn is, but beans are very high in protein. They have more of a healthy fat to them. They're very high in protein. Protein's hard to grow. And they store very easily. A few pounds of dry beans store forever. Potatoes. Potatoes can store for a long time. I've had potatoes stored for 6 months without going bad, just sitting in a 5-gallon bucket in the corner of my living room. They last a long time. And who doesn't like a nice potato? Now, there's a couple more crops you could consider, but they're not always the best. Something like pumpkins and squashes, winter squash. This is just my field squash. It's an interesting variety I've been developing for a few years, and I like it a lot. And just random pumpkins or field pumpkin. These are fine to grow. They don't really produce a whole lot of feed value, overall of food value. They're kind of on par with the beans as far as their overall calories per square foot. The reason, though, I really don't recommend them is just because they tend to take over a lot. If you don't have a lot of space, maybe don't plant something like these, because most varieties are vining and sprawling and they take up a lot of space. Though there are some varieties that are a bush variety and they don't vine over 10 or 20 feet. I've had 35, 38 foot long pumpkin vines before, but if you get a bush variety, they are more compact. But your pumpkins and squashes, they're a sucker for pests a lot more than most of these basic crops are. So they're not as easy and sure to grow. You've got to watch out for pests with your pumpkins and squash. You do have to watch out for pests with your potatoes. So there is another crop that I like instead of potatoes. Most people just don't like them. But I have right here. I just dug up this, which, by the way, came from one plant. It's actually more than this. I filled up another 1.5 gallons, almost 2 gallons, besides what's in this crate. So we got a good 27 pounds or so of these tubers from one plant. Can anybody recognize what that looks like it came from? Somebody probably can, I'm sure. They're still full of dirt. But that's known as the Jerusalem artichoke, the sunchoke, or the sunroot. It is a wild Native American old food crop. It's a type of a sunflower, a multi-stem sunflower that grows tubers, and they grow back from the tubers every year. Those tubers are about equal to eating a potato, but they do tend to give you a little gas if you're not used to them. It's kind of like beans. You've got to get used to that type of inulin starches that they have before you can really go heavy on it. And they do take over. I don't really mind that, because they're a beautiful sunflower plant, and in the fall when things die back, the stems fall down and you're left with a very heavy bounty of these delicious tubers that are really great for animal feed or for human food. It's just most people don't really like them. So I would go with potatoes for that reason in my recommendation. But for me personally, I'm growing the sunchokes a lot more. I mean, I grew almost 3,000 pounds of potatoes this year. But the sunchokes, the Jerusalem artichoke, that's still my main feed crop that we're growing out here. So just to recap, in case you didn't get it, in a 10 foot by 10 foot square, I can grow 20 to 40 pounds of dry corn. I can grow 8 to 12 pounds of dry shelled beans, and I can grow 150 to 300 pounds of potatoes in a 10-foot square. That's why these are the crops that if you don't have a lot of space, consider growing these, because What could you do with 300 pounds of potatoes? And you don't got to harvest them all at once. You can dig some of them early when they're smaller. They're delicious. They're sweeter and more tender then. You can leave them in the ground halfway through the winter. They stay good if you leave them in the ground and don't dig them up. Right until spring, they're still in the ground and still good. You don't have to dig them all out and store them all at once. Dig them out as you're needing them, as you want to use them. How many dinners can you get out of 300 pounds or even just 150 or maybe just 100 pounds of potatoes? That's a big deal. That's a lot of money worth of food right there. 8 to 12 pounds of beans. A little bit of beans goes a long way in making a meal filling and healthy, adding some good protein to what you're eating. There's a lot of value in that. And how about corn? 20 to 40 pounds worth of corn. By the way, you can take any kind of dried corn, put 2 or 3 cups in a blender, blend it up, and it'll make you a cornmeal. That's how I've ground hundreds of pounds of cornmeal. It works great. You can also roast it, just put it in a frying pan on a medium or medium-low heat until it kind of starts to brown, the shells crack open, and then it's a nice tasty snack. Or you can just soak it in water and simmer it slow until it softens up, and you get this nice kind of soft, chewy corn that you can put any flavors or seasonings on that you want. And that's also pretty good. Corn, beans, and potatoes. You really can't beat them very much at all for growing in a small area or even in a large area. That's why these are some of the primary major crops that are grown commercially, because they're productive and they're easy to store and easy to work with. I am going to say just one more time, if you're looking into growing any kind of corn, and I recommend everybody learn how to grow corn. It's awesome. Look for some kind of open pollinated heirloom seed. I really recommend this early pink for most situations. It's easy to grow, it's a fairly drought tolerant variety, and it's very high protein. It's got almost twice the protein of your standard corns in this area. Field corn, when they grow, it's got about 7% protein or so. This stuff has about 11.5% protein. So I do recommend early pink. I also recommend atomic orange. That's another one of the varieties I recommend. And if you're in the southern half of the U.S., look up Wade's Giant Indian. That's a more obscure variety. I like growing it, but it's harder in a northern climate. If you thought this was good, consider joining my YouTube membership. $2.99 a month, and you have access to a lot more high-level information, a lot of the kind of stuff that just doesn't work well on normal YouTube videos. And I'm putting an awful lot into those videos and the courses that I'm developing. It's all available in the YouTube channel membership for $2.99 a month. And don't forget, go check out the Facebook group, Homestead Know-How. I'll see you there.